live video. We are live. Good afternoon. This is the Public Circle live from the Constituency Office in Saanich North and the Islands. My name is Adam Olsen. I should say we're at the foot of Beacon in the beautiful city of Sidney by the sea. This is the Public Circle live. This is our fourth episode, and as I was saying last week, I was told if I could do 6 weeks in a row, then we'd get lighting. So you wouldn't have to look at these, well, maybe you wouldn't have to look at the fact that I have no hair and that the light is shining off of it, and you could see our faces beautifully. Today with me in the Public Circle is Ryan Clayton.
Hello.
You are who?
I'm the constituency assistant. So I manage the office here, and I'm often the first person people see when they come in the door. I'm usually the one who responds to emails, and if you've contacted our office, there's a good chance you've already interacted with me or even met me. So
that's right. So speaking of contacting our office, you can reach our office. You can check out all the work I do in the legislature at adamolsen.ca. And if you want to get in contact with us, please email us at adam.olsen.mla@ledge.bc.ca. Again, this is our fourth edition of the Public Circle Live, and we've got a lot of topics, so let's get right to it. So let's start. Let people know a little bit more about you. What's it like working in the constituency office?
It's busy. There's always a lot of emails and phone calls and people walking in, people sharing their thoughts and opinions, people raising concerns that they're having with things happening in the legislature, as well as people raising issues that they're having with government services. So I often am working on behalf of constituents, contacting the health ministry or contacting Worse Safe BC to try to get more information for people or to advocate on their behalf if they're running into problems. And I'm often doing a lot of research on behalf of constituents to try to find out more information about government programs or about how various things work and how they can access things through the provincial government. So So this is, we have set up a community advocacy office. That's the primary goal of our office, is to advocate on behalf of the amazing people in Saanich North and the Islands. And this is our number one asset within our community advocacy office. Ryan does an amazing job. And not only that, but he looks absolutely sharp. And you're welcome to leave your comments about how sharp Ryan looks. By the time I get to Friday, I have to admit, yes, I still wear the collared shirt, but I tend to leave the tie at home because that's all week for me. We've got a number of issues that I would like to... hello again, Kathy. Good to see you from Salt Spring Island. Welcome, Roy. Good to see you here this afternoon. Just want to note the people who are joining us, and thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. We've got 5 topics that we're going to cover, and we're going to try to do it in less than 40 minutes. I recognize last week, in the circle, we went for a very long time, and trying to keep this a little bit shorter, a little tighter on the delivery of our content, so we can canvass the issues that we'd like to talk about, but do it in a much tighter work. So the first issue we want to talk about is the work that the Green Party caucus did during question period this week. We canvassed the government's willingness to work and deal with salmon. I talked a lot last week about salmon, and this week we were quite successful, I think, in moving the dial. We've still got a ton of work to do, and of course, question period isn't means unto itself. We've got a lot of other tools that we can use at our disposal, but we worked all week to point out that the fish and fish policy in this province has a lot to be desired for. Yeah, it's disjointed, and actually, I'll just speaking for myself, one of the things I've discovered in this role in working with some of the community organizations that work around our streams is just how fundamentally important salmon is. And I grew up in the Okanagan, where the Adams River Salmon Run was a big part of growing up, and our school always went out and looked at it. And we did know that there was declining returns. Now that I have a better understanding of the work that community groups are doing to preserve streams and just how important the salmon are to our local ecosystem, it's so much more important than I ever realized. Even growing up around it, even going there in school, understanding how salmon life cycles worked, I just know so much more now about how important it is, and I'm really impressed with some of the work that you're doing.
So look, salmon is a huge part of who we are on the West Coast. I don't think that Canadians truly understand what that fish, what the salmon, but and we learned this week that steelhead aren't salmon, And we never said that they were, but people emailed us to tell us very clearly that they are a trout. And then we went and did some research and found out that actually
it's apparently contentious.
It's contentious. Anyway, we recognize that there are up to 6 ministries that have a piece of the legislative or the policy pie here when it comes to salmon. Plus, of course, DFO, and I've got strong feelings about the relationship that DFO has with our coast and with the salmon.
Department of Fisheries and Oceans, for
correct.
those who don't know the acronym.
Thank you. And we learned from government that up to 6 ministries in the provincial government are all taking a, quote, lead role. And one of the questions that we asked was around how can 6 ministries take a lead role? And that led to our work on Friday, and you might have seen it in the news, and we'll continue to ask for this, but we believe, and I believe strongly, that what we need in this province is a wild salmon secretariat or a commissioner, someone who's responsible for bringing all the work that's done by government together under one roof, with salmon being the central focus rather than, certainly the Ministry of Forest Lands, Natural Resource Operations, and Rural Development has got a huge implications on salmon, but forests come first, or land management come first. Salmon come second. And what we need is a government that takes a look at salmon, or an office that looks at salmon as its primary objective, recognizing, of course, that it's more than just environmental or social or economic. It's all 3 of these things, and I maintain and I will continue to advocate for the fact that salmon are the most important renewable resource that we have in British Columbia, and a huge part of our economy, a huge part of who we are, and a huge part of maintaining a vibrant, diverse ecosystem and environment. So we will continue to work on salmon. The second item that I'd like to talk about, actually, what I'll do is I'll say you can get a hold of us on Twitter at Adam P. Olsen, on Instagram at Adam Philip Olsen, and you can check out my Facebook page, share everything on my Facebook page. All the work that I do in the legislature, the videos are all there for you to see. I want to be very open to the public so that when I say something in the legislature, they create a video and I publish it on our website. You are watching the Public Circle Live. So the second item that I want to talk about is another very, very important piece that I canvassed this week, and you can see a video on it: Indigenous language recovery and revitalization. We found out this week that others in the legislature don't think that the investment in Indigenous languages is as important as I do, and I just want to emphasize that what showed up this week was something that I perhaps didn't acknowledge enough, is that we've got a lot more work to do in terms of establishing why Indigenous languages are as important as they are. And you had an interesting comment before we went live about that.
Yeah, I heard the comments that were made in the legislature, and they sort of diminished the importance of revitalizing Indigenous languages. And what sort of occurred to me, particularly as someone who I only speak English, I've never had that language taken away from me. As someone who's never experienced that, I really can't comprehend what it would be like to have my language taken away from me, and to have that part of my culture taken away, and to go through life having my language be a separate part, or separated. And so I was thinking, maybe with a bit of empathy for some of the people who are commenting on this, is maybe they really don't understand what that would be like, and how fundamentally altering it would be to lose your language, to have it taken away, and then to have the government come and say, okay, this is now a priority, we're going to revitalize your language, we're going to bring this back. I'm not sure that everyone would necessarily know right away how important that would be. And so I think maybe there's an opportunity here to do a bit of educating and a bit of a conversation with some of the people who are critical of this, just to really emphasize how important it is to revitalize these languages, and how significant it is to people's lives that the government, through a lot of their history, has taken away language, is now making a priority in bringing it back.
I absolutely agree, and we see at the Leona School on West Saanich Road what language revitalization is doing for the Saanich people here. And I would just put it this way. Think if another group came in and said, you can no longer speak English, and every time you do speak English, we will punish you for it, what that would do to our society. It seems unimaginable, but in reality, it's my grandfather who had the language beaten from him, literally. It's my grandparents. So this isn't long ago history. This is very recent history. It goes to long ago history, but it was happening up until recent times. And so I think where there is this controversy, or where there is these differences of opinion, presents the opportunity for us to educate, to celebrate the diverse culture that we have. There's 33 linguistic groups in this province, Indigenous languages. From what I understand, up to 10,000 different dialects. Canada, British Columbia is the most linguistically diverse province, a region in the country, and there's an opportunity here. And as I said in the video, and you can go onto my website, adamolsen.ca, check it out. There's a video on there about this. That this is the most significant step towards reconciliation that a government in Canada has made. This $50 million investment in Indigenous languages, and it deserves to be celebrated. Mm-hmm. So, item number 3 on the list is MSP.
Yeah.
The medical services premium. The way that it was being delivered was a regressive tax.
Yeah.
Basically, if
everyone
you made
paid the same.
Yeah, that's right. If you made $30,000 or made $300,000, you made the same, or you paid the same amount in medical services premium, and it was directly on you, or to pay for you or your family. Currently, there was a lot of businesses, many businesses in the province paid medical services premium for their employees, but it was a regressive tax. And we, throughout the campaign and going back years, have advocated to remove that regressive tax and find a different way to pay for health care, to collect money from British Columbians to pay for health care. What we proposed was some kind of a mix between a payroll tax and a charge on income tax. So 60-40 one way or another, but to share the burden across individuals and businesses, and to make sure that the amount that people were paying was progressive. So if you made less, then you paid less, and if you made more, then you paid more. And we're the only jurisdiction in Canada that's not the case.
Yeah, we're the only jurisdiction that still charges the MSP premium, and other provinces had charged it in the past but got rid of it, and most provinces had moved to some kind of progressive system where the people on the lower end of the income scale would pay less, people on the higher end would pay more, and one of the arguments for businesses to pay into it was that businesses benefit from having both a healthy workforce and a healthy customer base. So businesses pay into it, they get a healthy community where they can operate their business in. People pay in so that they can have access to the healthcare system while paying what they can afford. And what the BC Greens put forward, I think, was a fairly reasonable proposal. And then the NDP have taken it in the direction that they've taken it.
And what we've seen in this budget 2018, the medical services premium is in fact going to go away. And we've heard a lot about it in question period. The official opposition has talked quite a bit about the change that the provincial government, the BC NDP, have proposed, and it's entirely a payroll tax. Mm-hmm. And the response from people, from businesses, and in our riding has been pretty profound. In fact, we've heard quite a bit from people who are business owners, specifically business owners over $1.5 million in payroll, who will be carrying the brunt of this change. And in Saanich North and the Islands, some ridings, there's not going to be many businesses that have a payroll over $1.5 million. But in Saanich North and the Islands, frankly, there are quite a number of those businesses in our riding. And so basically what we're inviting those businesses to do is to send us at adamolsen.ca or adam.olsen.mla@ledge.bc.ca. Send us your story. Tell us how this is going to impact you. The reality is that we're still a ways away, about a year away from the actual final changes. There's going to need to be legislation that comes forward to make this change. There's still an opportunity to inform government on this. And so we're inviting business owners primarily who are going to be impacted by this to send us what the implications are on your business. We want to know. I want to be able to advocate on behalf of our constituents. It's important that we have a balance of healthy people and healthy businesses. And that includes both not only the physical health, but also the financial and the fiscal health and well-being as well. So if you could please send us that information, adam.olsen.mla@ledge.bc.ca. You have likely received an email from us or from someone that we know who may be reaching out to you on our behalf. Please send us that information. It's very important. I want to be able to advocate for you.
Yeah, one thing that is just worth pointing out, and I think kind of exciting about, is that we are now having a debate about the best way to eliminate MSP premiums, and that really came out of the advocacy of Andrew Weaver as the lone Green in the legislature, speaking for something that neither of the other parties were speaking for. And so, maybe this approach needs to be questioned and challenged in different ways. It is really exciting that we are moving towards eliminating those premiums, and I think some kudos to Andrew Weaver for his advocacy on that.
Absolutely, and one of the things that I would like to see with our government is that when government brings something forward, it's, rarely is it perfect, and it takes putting it forward and to hear back from the people about how, and business owners, about how it's going to impact them. And what I really hope in now and for governments in the future is that we get into a situation where when people give us feedback and advice on how to improve something, that we don't, as government, take it personally. Mm-hmm. That we are willing to it's been so confrontational that we've been, as government, we've seen governments unwilling to incorporate good advice and good ideas simply because they weren't ours. And I think that what the opportunity that's here is to say, this is not a bad idea to get rid of MSP premiums. This is a good idea, and it's one that we've asked for and advocated for, that British Columbians wanted. Thousands, tens of thousands of British Columbians have signed petitions to get rid of the regressive MSP premiums. We have a government that's doing that. It doesn't mean that what they're doing is perfect. And it doesn't mean that, and so what I would like to see is a government that says, you know what, I'm going to take that advice. We're going to take that advice. We're not going to admit that this is we're not going to say that this is a defeat. We're going to say that we're listening to people and that we're incorporating these ideas to make it a better program.
Mm-hmm. That's how you get good public policy.
It's how you make good public policy. Imagine that. A speculation tax. So Ryan is my constituency assistant. We talked about his role. Mm-hmm. So, hello, Bill Burns from the Bahamas. You're still in the Bahamas? That's 2 weeks in a row that you're getting to us from the Bahamas. I'll pretend I'm not frustrated about the fact that it's raining outside and that it's snowing earlier. Welcome to the Public Circle Live. Bill Burns from the Bahamas. One of these days I'll get to the Bahamas. Anyway, we're talking, if you're just joining us, which Bill is, we were just about to get on to the speculation tax, and that's something that you've heard a lot about this week, eh?
Yeah, so right from when the budget was announced, we started hearing feedback about the speculation tax, which is a 2% levy on people who don't reside in British Columbia on their annual property taxes. And so first thing that I needed to do is I had to dive into the budget, and I had to memorize all the details of the speculation tax, because the first that we got was just a lot of questions. People wanted to know more about what this tax was, how it would apply, why it would apply the way that it did, particularly since one of the decisions of the government was to apply it to regional districts. What parts of the regional districts would that apply to?
Yeah, so that's Metro Vancouver, the Fraser Valley, the Capital Regional District, the Nanaimo Regional District, Kelowna, and West Kelowna.
Yeah.
And everything outside of those areas.
Yeah, they're not part of this.
They're not a part of this. So resort areas, this does not apply there.
A few people have pointed out that Whistler, which is dealing with issues of speculation, isn't included in this. So and that's something that might need to be looked at.
Exactly.
So I memorized as many details as I could and answered as many questions as I could. And people weren't necessarily happy with it. We had a lot of feedback, negative, a lot of people talking about the way that this is going to impact them. Particularly, we're hearing a lot from people on fixed income, so people on pensions who now have to reevaluate their fiscal plan that they had thought that they would live out their lives under this particular plan that they've made. Now they're going to have, they feel that they have to change details. Yeah. Hearing a lot of people who have bought a home with the intention of retiring there. Now they're wondering if that's even going to be possible, because can they afford these taxes until they reach the point when they retire? So we're hearing a lot back from the community about people who feel that they're going to be quite deeply affected by this.
But again, this is one of these situations in which the government in this budget has proposed a 2% speculation tax. They propose that it's going to be rolled out over a period of time, but it's going to require legislation.
Yeah.
And that legislation is going to come in the fall. So there's an opportunity between now and that legislation for British Columbians to provide their feedback.
Yep.
I think it's important to recognize that the reason why this speculation tax was proposed, and full disclosure, you can go on the bcgreens.ca website and you can learn that we've proposed a speculation tax, slightly different than what the government has rolled out. But one of the reasons why this government has taken some controversial actions on foreign buyers tax, a speculation tax, and other policy initiatives is because we are in a housing crisis. And it was just a few weeks ago that British Columbians all across the economic, the socio-economic spectrum were demanding the British Columbia government take action on housing, on the housing affordability crisis. Now, one of the challenges that we have here is we have a situation in which we have not, over the past 5 years, the government has not taken enough small, prudent steps in dealing with the housing affordability crisis as it's grown. And there were ways for government to deal with this in small incremental steps over time. Unfortunately, we've got to a situation where it's quite an unsustainable situation that we're in right now. And this government is required to take much greater steps all at once, or a much greater step all at once. And so it's profound, the steps the government needs to take, and the speculation tax is one part of that. And I know that Bill is watching with us, and he's mentioned the supply side of it, and the government has started to make investments in supply. And in our riding, as an example, we've got an endless supply of demand, which is a neat little thing that that I say about it. But it's true that with people retiring to this region, to this riding, we have this endless flow of people coming into our riding. This endless supply of, we could just build and build and build, and we would sell them all, and the price would stay high. The other thing, we've heard a lot from people that are impacted by this on the Gulf Islands, and people who have a second home on the Gulf Islands. And I should say that this is a challenge. There's no question that there's a challenge here. And I can't tell you the number of meetings that I have. Actually, I could tell you the number of meetings that I've had. I'd have to go back and take a look at them. But there's been dozens and dozens of meetings that I've had since becoming the MLA from people who have said the Gulf Islands, currently, the way it is now, it's unsustainable. There's growing homelessness. There's a vast number of empty homes for a large majority of the year, 48, 49 weeks of the year, empty homes. There's a huge need for rental properties on the southern Gulf Islands. And so we've got these conflicting interests. There's no question about it. I have a great deal amount of empathy for the fact that people are going to be impacted by this. People are being impacted by the policy the way it was. They're going to be impacted by the change. And I think that what I want to emphasize here is we don't want you to stop communicating with us how this is going to impact. We want you to continue. We want to build a volume of information. I know that he's like, oh. No, we want you to continue to communicate with us. Tell us how this is going to impact you, both on the side of owning a second property and not living here, and how that's going to impact you, but also how the current situation is impacting you. Let us know, because we got between now and the fall session, when government puts in their legislation. And again, I want to emphasize that there's no defeat here of government. This is not a defeat. The fact that this government has started to take progressive action on the housing affordability crisis, they should be recognized and applauded for that. Now, how we implement it, how we do what we are going to do, create the policy, there's the opportunity. And, if they change from one idea to another, of course, what we've got is the official opposition are going to say,
broke
a promise. Yes. The reality is that government should be a collaborative process. We should be working together. We should be informing each other and taking each other's advice and not seeing it as a defeat, but seeing it as positive. Mm-hmm. Anyway, that's part of a broader change in government that I hope to be a part of, frankly.
Yeah.
Anything else on this? I think please continue to send us information. I know I just asked you a question and then ignored your answer. adam.olsen.mla@ledge.bc.ca. If you want to see any of the videos, the Hansard videos from my work over this past week and the weeks before, you can see them at adamolsen.ca. Yeah. Now I'll let you answer the question.
There you go.
Anything else on this?
Yeah, I just think one thing that's really important to emphasize in this is that there are people, who are worried about how they're going to be impacted by these taxes. There are people who have now, particularly my age, completely given up on the concept of ever owning any kind of property. So we do have this gulf between the people who they have property and likely bought before this housing crisis escalated into the chaos that it's become. And then we have these people who grew up, worked hard, did everything that their parents' generation did to try to build capital, build an investment with the intent of eventually owning a home. And that dream's now impossible. Like I've done the math on my own finances and, I do well for myself and I work hard. It's mathematically impossible for me to buy a home in this area at any point in my life. If I were to save up every penny that I make that is surplus above my expenses from now until assuming nothing changes, it would take me about 250 years for me to save up enough money to actually buy a property here. And that's just, that is the reality that a lot of people my age are now facing. So we do have this gulf between people who want to protect the investment that they made, and that's very understandable, and people who will never be able to make that investment because of the situation that we've gotten into. And somehow we need to bridge that divide. And
let this be a lesson to government. Don't ignore big problems. Deal with it.
Yeah.
And this is the biggest frustration for me, is that we could have taken progressive action on this.
Long time.
So I'll say incremental action. We could have taken small steps over time rather than having to be forced into a situation to take big steps, to take a big step at once or a couple of large steps. So this is a message to government. Don't let these problems get out of control. Deal with them. That's our role. And frankly, there's been way too much politics being played here. And we could go back to why we're in this situation, is we're trying to leverage a strong economy rhetoric on the backs of homeowners, on the backs of property owners. And so, people have a right to be mad. And they have a right to be mad about a lot of things to a lot of people. And we all have a responsibility here. We have a responsibility now to fix the problems. And at some point, they become ours. And so we can't sit around and blame everybody else forever. The fact of the matter is that at some point, they become our problem as an elected official. And we have a responsibility to deal with it. And I'm glad that this government's taken steps. And I'm glad that we've got some time to have a good, honest conversation and try to get this right. And then, if we don't get it right, to admit that. To smile, and then to recommit to work together to get a public policy piece that does work. And of course, you're never going to find a piece that doesn't impact someone positively and someone negatively. I recognize that. And you're never going to find a perfect public policy solution for everybody. Someone said to me, "How do you vote?" And I said, "Well, I've got to distill 50,000 differences of opinion with one vote, yay or nay." It's not possible. So a little update here. You might have heard me. So this is the fifth and final thing that we're going to talk about today. You might have heard me talk about the Youth Mental Health Clinic that was set up by Dr. Kate Evans here at the foot of Beacon. And I've mentioned in previous videos and in the House that had to close down because of a variety of reasons. And I come with good news. I saw on Facebook I think it was yesterday, that the Peninsula Medical Clinic on Bevan, this is the interdisciplinary clinic that's been set up and operating quite successfully for the past year or 18 months. They are going to be reopening the Peninsula Youth Mental Health Clinic. I'm extremely happy that this has been started and that this mental health clinic now has a brand new home. It is at the Peninsula Medical Clinic on Bevan Avenue. It's reopening on March the 15th from 5:30 to 7:30. And so please, for those that are watching and those that will watch, a shout out to the group that's reopening this. But as well, if you know of any youth that may want to access this clinic, you can nudge them in this direction. It's reopening on March the 15th. And if you want more information, just visit the Peninsula Medical Clinic. And this is run by the Saanich Peninsula Primary Care Society, a great organization that's looking to continue to build team-based primary care on the Saanich Peninsula. So, one final bit of business before we sign off for this Friday, the 4th edition on Friday, March the 2nd. You have a question for me.
Yeah. And I think it's...
This is not answer period, by the way. So.
Yeah, you'll give me you'll just nod. I think this ties well into the conversation that we've had so far in that, thinking of myself, a couple of years ago, I was politically independent. I wasn't involved with any party. I think a lot of people, particularly my age, like party membership's a pretty uncommon thing to find around people my age. We're certainly politically interested and politically involved, but in terms of partisan politics, we tend to avoid it because it can be very toxic. It can be aggressive, and we certainly see it in the House frequently. I watch Question Period often. And,
I'm sorry.
And it can be very vitriolic. It can be very personal. It can be very sort of attack-based. It's a bit of gotcha politics, trying to get someone to slip up and say something wrong. So in that context, this is the way our political system's built. This is how we operate within it. You have this interesting role of being in a minority government where you have the opportunity to work with either party if they're willing. You have relationships with people within both parties. You are within the third party, so you are have a bit of neutrality within that. Even though we have a confidence and supply agreement with the New Democrats, you could work with the Liberals, pass a bill, pass a motion. So how do you build that relationship with both the NDP government, members of that party, and then the Liberal opposition and members of that party?
Our system of government, Westminster system of government, is very confrontational in its very nature. And that has not served us very well. We still sit 2 sword lengths away from the people who are on the other side of the aisle, and it does create a lot of confrontation. I think that what I try to do in Question Period is I try to ask questions that can be answered. We give the government a heads up on what the content of what we're going to be asking about, so that we're not. We want answers, but for me, I come to this to politics with a strong background in communications and building networks. That's what I love to do, and I love working with people, just people, and so for me, it's probably one of the most interesting parts of the job. And I recognize that when I'm sitting in here in the constituency office and I'm meeting different people every day, that they come in and talk to me about their government. I have no idea where they are on the political spectrum. We don't start with did you vote for me or did you vote for one of the other people? We don't talk about that. And so it's only in the legislature where that matters. Uh-huh. When it comes right down to it, everybody that I meet in the constituency office wants to improve the quality of life in their communities. Uh-huh. And I try to take that into the legislature. And there's no question that it gets frustrating, and there's no question that we have that in no place like the legislature do differences of opinion become so obvious. Yeah. But in the end, I spend a lot of time trying to connect with people, and aside from the theater of Question Period or the theater of it all, I recognize that we're all people, and we all have a passion for this province. We all understand that there's opportunities for this province, and we all understand that I think that we recognize that there's multiple different ways to achieve the end goal, which is to make this the best place, to continue to encourage this place to be the best place to live in the whole world. And so for me, it's investing in relationships, and it's what's got me to the seat to represent this amazing place of Saanich North in the Islands, and certainly it wasn't 14,000 whatever Greens that voted for me. There were people who obviously stepped out from where they normally would be and took a chance, and I'm honored to have the opportunity to represent this place. And I take the same approach that I took in the campaign, with the passion and love for this place, and I take that into the legislature with the same kind of passion and love for the province of British Columbia. And no matter what happens, we are going to have a government that works better together if we take the time to build personal relationships with them, setting aside the fact that we represent different parties and different platforms and all of that. And we spend an awful lot of time, and it seems like the place is designed. It's designed for confrontation. And so for me, I'd like to erode that design, where we are just there to confront. I think that what I would like to be able to demonstrate over the next 3.5 years, and I think we're going to be there for 3.5 more years, is that we can respectfully ask government questions and hold them accountable while working in a positive way with them to develop good public policy. I mean, the MSP and the speculation tax issue, the foreign buyers tax, these are all issues that we have an opportunity. We might not agree entirely with how they're being implemented, but that doesn't mean you throw the entire thing under the bus. That means that you have to roll up your sleeves and work a little bit harder in getting to it. So that's a long-winded, maybe perhaps political answer to the question, but it comes to a commitment and a willingness to work across party lines. And certainly I and my colleagues are right there, and we have this unique situation of a minority government where we can show that it can work. And I think, if you take a look back at the election and recognize that the NDP and the Greens were willing opponents of one another, and it wasn't easy. It was not an easy election. But when it came down to it, between May 9th and June 1st of last year, and I can't believe that it's almost been a year already, when British Columbia needed a government, we set aside our personal differences and we went to work on finding where we had agreement. And I think if I could distill my long-winded answer down into one thing, it's to start on agreement. We can find all the things that we disagree on. You and I spend 0% of our time talking about the things that we disagree on.
No.
We spend most of the time, and I think a lot of people in society do. And once we've built that strong relationship, once we're comfortable and understand where we agree,
then we can disagree.
Then we can start to work on the things that might be a little bit more difficult. And I think that's where we're at. That's where we'll be in politics, and that's kind of the approach that I take with it. And actually, we don't spend 0% of the time. We do spend time, but that's only after we get to know one another.
Yeah, we've known each other for a while now, so that's right. we can chat about the things where we might have a difference of opinion. And actually, that's something I think I value quite a bit about working with you, and actually with Andrew Weaver as well. I've had times where I've disagreed with him, and we've had a great conversation about it. And I think it's one of the things that makes me really glad that I'm part of this team.
Disagree, but do not be disagreeable. I think many people smarter than me have said that. Disagree without being disagreeable. That's the way it goes. So we're going to sign off today. We'll be back again, same time, same place, Facebook, next week, 4:30, Fridays. This is the Public Circle Live. One more time, you can find us on our website, adamolsen.ca. All the work that I do in the legislature is there on video. You can email me and Ryan at adam.olsen.mla@ledge.bc.ca. You can find us on all your friendly social media channels. Olsen for MLA on Facebook, at Adam P. Olsen on Twitter, at Adam Philip Olsen on Instagram. This is the Public Circle Live. We're signing off the 4th episode. When we get to 6, we're going to have great lights, according to all the Spurl. So we're going to keep doing this every week, Fridays at 4:30. Please share this video with all of your friends. This is Ryan Clayton. I'm Adam Olsen, signing off from the beautiful seaside village of Sidney in the landmark building at the foot of Beacon in our constituency office of Saanich North in the Islands. This is the Public Circle Live. Have a great weekend, everybody.